I know, right? You want me to put my jacket back on? I can do that too. That's right, but don't make me. No, I'm closer to you than you think. I'm here in Maryland. So yeah, yeah. I mean, we don't wear suits in Florida. Do you want me to stand up? It's like a second home. Michelle's going to stay there all the time, but uh, I'm going to be back and forth and stuff. All right.
Started, call to order the August 10th, 2022 meeting of the Poolsville Planning Commission. Uh, First on the agenda, we have citizens' comments on agenda items. We have anybody that wants to speak on the agenda items this evening? All right. Oh, we do have somebody. Two people. Jerome Klubikowski, would you like to speak about something this evening?
Should we set the timer?
You have a minute 45 seconds. And it started a minute and 45 seconds ago. Good to see you, Jerry.
Thank you. Is this close enough? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'm Jerry Klubikowski, live at 17300 Fletcher Road in Poolsville, Maryland. And I'd like to comment on the proposed chicken ordinance, or the thought of allowing them in town. When I was growing up, I did help a friend of mine whose father ran a very successful chicken farm. He had like 3 barns with chickens that were layers and then turned into fryers. And they aren't the most pleasant things to have around, whether they're in a barn or in a yard. We had a pigeon ordinance, and that was the reason we implemented that was because of the person who had the aviary, the way he cleaned the aviar and disposed of the droppings, created a smell that neighbors couldn't sit out in their backyard. I just think that although we are in the ag reserve, and there's enough places around that offer eggs, milk, fresh vegetables like Lewis's, and I know about Kingsbury, and there's other places when you go up Route 28 and some of the other roads around town where you can buy fresh eggs. So I'm not sure I understand the need for it. And when I remember when I was part of the commission and having a long conversation with a gentleman concerning our chicken ordinance, he said, well, it's a great thing for the kids. They learn how to take care of, and be responsible, and they treat them as pets. And then about 5 minutes later in the conversation, then he said, well, you can eat them. I don't know. I never thought of wanting to eat either of my dogs, although I like to brain the first one. But, I never thought that they would be looking nice, splayed, on a platter with some au jus and mashed potatoes and gravy. So, I find that rather sad. But, enforcement. We don't enforce the existing laws we have on the books now. We really don't. We try and accommodate everybody, but when it comes down to really the rubber hits the road, we don't enforce the ordinance, any of them, or that I've seen, except for maybe mowing the grass. I know that one gets enforced every now and then, but I don't know how many times we've had a code enforcement officer go out and see how many people put sheds, in violation of the setback rules or done other things to their property, like over on Whitaker, where a gentleman went ahead and rearranged the berm so his yard wouldn't flood out because the yards of 3 people on Dowden Circle to flood out when there's one heck of a rainstorm. So that I have that question about that. It would help out the local wildlife. I think the foxes, the coyotes, and the weasels would appreciate the chickens, along with maybe some feral cats. But, and I also, good luck to parents who believe their children are going to really get into it. Because I remember my daughter had rabbits, and when I look back about who cleaned the cages, especially after she went to college, it was me. It was only thankful that the dear little rabbit decided to go to bunny heaven that I could stop. But, that. But, and then there's also the issue of avian flu. Now, somebody will say, well, it's not, no one's heard of it being communicated to humans, but over 72 million chickens and turkeys were culled from flocks. I think it was in Iowa and Indiana earlier this year. And that is brought by migratory birds. It's not, and if there are droppings on the ground, regardless of how you have your coop enclosed, if you step in it and you will bring it in to the chicken coop, and it will spread. But I think a lot of the things that I'd like to say have already been said about why we should not have this chicken ordinance. I don't care what other towns do. They can do whatever they want. So if we're going to have chickens, why don't we have cows and goats? Because people can get fresh milk. Why not? What's wrong with that? And I know a friend of mine, he used to live across the street from a guy who had chickens, and the chickens would disappear, and because they would walk across the road into my friend's yard, and they were never seen again. And then you're going to end up with neighbor upon neighbor, and these chickens wandering around. And as one person puts out here, I don't think we need to create any more, problems between neighbors because one person doesn't like chickens and the other one does. And I think, again, what other towns do, but just because we're in the ag reserve doesn't automatically translate to we ought to allow chickens being in Poolsville. And I think I've said my piece. I think, like I said, a lot of the objections that are voiced in the people's comments are valid, and I think they should be considered. And I think this is something that, it's nice to try and accommodate citizens, but once in a while, you have to basically say, there is a limit to things that we should allow in town. So anyways, thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Next, we have Matthew Johnson.
Good evening. I come to you as a representative of the Westmont Townhouse Association. A board member, the other board members and I have discussed the proposed loosening of chicken regulations in town, and we are firmly opposed to it as it relates to the Westmont Townhouse Association. We have our own regulations and covenants that address this, but we are concerned about the effect of any announcement by the town and any licensing program that the town may introduce, as it may encourage people to violate our covenants and our rules, and thereby pushing enforcement onto the homeowners association. Now, in the interest of the public discussion, I've prepared basically a response to last month's proposal for chicken keeping regulations in Poolesville. I've done a little bit of research about the regulations that are used by some of the surrounding jurisdictions and pieced together a proposal that I'm not pushing, saying that this is something the town should adopt, but some ideas that I think should be part of the public discussion. This is intended as a moderating force. So if I may, I'm going to read a statement. Purpose, this is alternate proposal for chicken keeping regulations in Poolesville. Purpose, to allow for the limited keeping of chickens on residential properties in the town of Poolesville, Maryland, while protecting the enjoyment and property value of nearby homeowners. Background. In the late 1970s, a pigeon fancier bought a single-family home in the 19800 block of Westerly Avenue. He constructed a dovecote in the rear yard and kept 90 to 200 homing pigeons. This permissible use placed a heavy burden on his neighbors, severely impacting their enjoyment of their property and the value of their homes. The Poolesville commissioners found that they were unable to provide the neighbors relief from the odor, noise, and disruption that the large flock of pigeons created. Efforts by the commissioners to impose regulation were rejected by the courts because they were ruled to be targeting one homeowner. After a long ordeal and at great expense, the neighbors were granted relief in the county council. The town commissioners subsequently passed very restrictive rules regarding the keeping of birds in the town. All right, rationale. The commissioners of Poolesville are asked this year to dramatically relax the restrictions on the keeping of birds, specifically hens. The proposal for chicken keeping regulations in Poolesville, presented to the Planning Commission in July 2022, suggests a highly permissive regulatory environment that is considerably more relaxed than the regulations of nearby jurisdictions, specifically Montgomery County, Frederick County, and the city of Frederick. Adoption of these proposed regulations would provide little protection for nearby property owners and could limit the commissioner's ability to impose restrictions in the future. In order to protect residents and owners from the loss of property value and enjoyment, the following alternate regulations are offered. Number. No chickens or other domestic fowl may be kept on properties under 10,000 square feet, as described on Maryland land records. On properties over 10,000 square feet, a permit may be sought to keep hens at a rate of 1 per full 500 square feet of backyard. Backyard is well defined in the City of Frederick's ordinance G 1611. The maximum number of hens may not exceed 6. Setbacks. coops and cages must be placed in the backyard of a single-family detached residential lot. Coops or cages must be placed not less than 25 feet from any property line, and all coops and cages must be at least 5 feet further from any property line than they are from the owner's dwelling. If you follow me here, what I'm saying is that if people are going to be permitted to keep chickens on residential lots, then they need to own that decision. They need to keep those chickens close to the house, where if odor becomes a problem, it becomes a problem to them first, before it is noticeable and objectionable to their neighbors. So rather than push the coop to the far back of the yard and impose on surrounding properties, they should instead pull it close to the house. Enclosures. Chickens should be provided with a covered, predator-proof coop or cage that is well ventilated and designed to be easily accessed for cleaning. The coop shall allow at least 2 square feet per chicken. In addition, the chickens shall have access during daylight hours to an outdoor run or enclosure that is adequately fenced to keep the birds within the run and to prevent contact with predators and wild birds. I think Jerry made some reference to the problem of chickens coming in contact with wild populations. The run shall provide at least 4 and not more than 10 square feet per chicken. Chickens shall not be allowed out of the enclosures unless their wings are kept clipped to prevent flight and they are directly monitored by a responsible adult. Sanitation. The coop and outdoor enclosure must be kept in a sanitary condition and free of offensive odors. The coop and outdoor enclosure must be cleaned on a regular basis to prevent the accumulation of waste. Food shall be kept in secure metal rodent-proof containers. Care of chickens. Coops and enclosures shall provide adequate protection from predators and weather. Birds must be registered with the Maryland Department of Agriculture per state regulation, and all inspections and requests for information provided for promptly. Clean water, appropriate feed, and veterinary care as needed must be provided to chickens. Slaughter. No slaughter of chickens will be permitted on any residential property in the town. Roosters. 10 to 30% of quote-unquote sexed chicks will prove to be roosters. Owners must make arrangements for the prompt and proper removal and disposition of all roosters. No roosters may be kept within the town. Permits. The owner must apply for and obtain a revocable permit for the keeping of chickens before any chickens are obtained, following the procedures established by the town of Poolesville. Other laws. Nothing in this proposal shall be construed to eliminate the need for compliance with any other applicable law or regulation, including but not limited to building, zoning, property maintenance, agriculture, or health regulations. Finally, private covenants. No permit from the town of Poolesville for the keeping of chickens shall be construed to supersede or allow the violation of any homeowners association regulations, deed restrictions, or other private covenants. So, this is my effort to moderate the public discussion. May I submit a copy of my remarks after a few edits by email?
Absolutely.
Is there a Dropbox for the planning commission that I might use, or?
If you just send it to town hall,
Very good.
distribute it.
Thank
for
you.
that.
Yeah,
Interesting stuff.
thank you. That's all we have for citizen comments.
Some people came late.
Anybody else want to
Yeah,
comment?
does anybody else here to comment on any of the agenda items?
Would I be able to
Sure.
present? I just wanted to present the petition that I started around town just to see how many people were actually interested in keeping chickens.
Write your name. And then,
It's Elizabeth Carpenter. Want me to give it back to you?
right there is fine.
Okay. So I'm not going to take a lot of your time this evening. I just wanted to show you a written copy of the 185 people who have signed this petition. And many which are in Poolsville, some of whom are not, who are friends and family, which who live nearby, which is
Thank you very
wonderful.
much.
You're welcome. Here you go. So my comments are only to, I'd like to say that by bringing this forward, I never meant to create more work or a problem for the town. Keeping backyard pets as hens is something that I've done with my family, with my children who are here tonight, for 12 years. And I have really enjoyed being able to teach them where their food comes from. They are wonderful parts of our life, and we enjoy keeping them and know we would never slaughter them or serve them up in a soup pot on a Sunday evening. What I'd like to propose is that you consider, I'm sorry, what was your name, Matthew?
Yes.
Hi, Matthew. What he proposed are sensible regulations, and I think it's reasonable to look at those more closely. What I proposed to you was something similar from Baltimore County, but I didn't write it myself, okay? And I think what he's suggesting is reasonable. I do think that the number of hens should be limited, that there shouldn't be roosters, that there should be setbacks that are reasonable to respect each other's properties. There is a myth about somehow keeping chickens that it devalues your property, and it's unsubstantiated. I can tell you that for a fact. The Forbes top 10 list of communities lists all communities that allow keeping chickens. When I lived in Westport, I lived less than a mile down the street from Martha Stewart. She kept heritage breeds of hens, and everyone around town kept chickens. Not everyone, actually just a few people. It wasn't that popular of a thing to do because it's a lot of work and it's actually an expensive hobby. So if you think about it, only a few people are going to want to do this. I can't imagine we're going to run into another hoarder situation, and I do think we should limit the number of hens per property. I think that's a reasonable expectation. So I'd like you to consider that and to consider what Matthew presented tonight as a reasonable, sensible set of regulations, and also look at what I proposed a couple weeks ago to you all and think about that as well. And maybe together we can work toward a solution that will work for the whole town. Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else wish to comment on the agenda items?
Do I need to sign my name?
If you wouldn't mind, please, and state it.
Yeah, I'm David Wilson. I'm at 10715 Tom Fox Avenue. I'd like to just speak on behalf, in support of the backyard chickens. I'm not a backyard chicken guy, but it makes sense. My daughter, who lives in Hagerstown with my 3 granddaughters, they have 3 chickens, and they do use them for the eggs, and they do use them to teach my granddaughter's responsibility. They homeschool, and so there's a huge, endless a number of lessons that you can teach using chickens that you have in your own backyard. You know, you hear, and I appreciate the gentleman behind me, I think it's Matthew, of presenting solutions rather than problems. When I hear folks talk about, the smell, I guess anything smells if you don't take care of it. When I walk into my daughter's backyard, I smell the neighbor's dog and all the crap from the big German Shepherd. When I pull up, I don't hear the chickens either. I hear the neighbor's dog. So are chickens noisy and smelly? Well, I guess, but if you apply the same standard, and I don't know if the Planning Commission's willing to apply the same standard to other pets, as they have, not you, but people have talked about applying to the chickens, well, if it stinks and it makes noise, you need to get rid of it. Well, there goes almost all the kids and every dog. I mean, I have people that walk up and down my street walking their dog, and they pick up their poop in the little bag and they tie it, and then they leave the bag sitting there, which is kind of ridiculous. But if you're willing to apply that same standard to our dogs, there's not going to be any dogs left. My little dog is certainly a good snack for a predator, because probably my daughter's chickens are bigger than my little dog. Anyway, I do just want to support good, responsible ownership of chicken keeping in Poolesville. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any other comments on the agenda items?
Am I able to make a comment now as a town resident?
Yes?
Okay. May I come up?
Yep, just need to state your name and address for the record, please. Write it down on that sheet of paper.
It's Michael Zuckerman, and it's 18231 Barnesville Road in Barnesville. I am actually a town commissioner in the town of Barnesville. I'm here in support, actually, of my aunt, Liz Carpenter. And I just wanted to state that, I appreciate you guys hearing this topic and working with all involved and trying to see if we can, or if you guys are able to come up with a reasonable compromise. And I think that the most important thing, at least that I've been able to see, and I've of course been following this closely as a chicken owner myself, is that I think that you're going to hear the loudest folks from both sides for the yeses and also the nos. And I think that it's going to be a matter of finding that compromise, as that's already been stated, as far as regulations and keeping of hens. And I think that what's already been stated by Liz and also the gentleman before is it kind of, it's that compromise. And I can say that in the town of Barnesville, many people have chickens. And I can tell you that a lot of the topics that have been brought up for reasons against keeping chickens, at least in the town of Barnesville, we have not really experienced that. And we don't have any complaints from town residents in regards to the keeping of chickens. And quite honestly, this is not what I would assume you guys are going to do, but we don't have any regulations at all as far as limiting the kind of livestock or the amount of hens or roosters or anything like that in the town of Barnesville. And I find that most people that keep chickens are respectful of our neighbors, and we don't take advantage of that. And there really are no issues. So I think that the most important thing that I could just recommend is that as you guys, move through the decision-making process here, is that it's just you guys are taking into consideration a reasonable items, and not fear, not things based out of fear and that sort of thing. Just one last thing I would say is that as it relates to property values, I think that as it relates to whether it's chicken keeping or almost any other topic, unless it's really, really bad, I have never seen an instance where somebody wouldn't purchase a house because of something that's going on next door, quite honestly, unless it's somebody that's throwing parties constantly or, something of that sort. So, as far as that goes, that's what I have to offer just as an outsider, I would say, just kind of looking at it from the town over. I think that's just, that wraps up my comments, so.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
And you're not an outsider, you're a community member. Just live within the town limits. That's for me to.
Oh, I'm
No,
sorry.
I'm just kidding.
That was a coaster.
Kevin will do it with his water.
Any other comments on agenda items? All right. Very good. Wade, do we have any announcements from the town?
I was going to say, you probably already heard, but the commissioners did approve the sale of the old Methodist church, which was the thrift shop on West Willard Road, to the owner of Locals, and he's got some really neat concepts and ideas to improve that area.
Nice. We'll see those. Awesome. Anything from the commissioners?
No, just wait till my thunder.
You is first. Do we have two people that were here for the, we can do this?
There was,
Just the two of you.
Just the two of you here.
Lexi's
oh, because Lexi's not here. Okay, yeah.
So we can,
Two of you were here though, right?
yeah, so they can vote on it. Yeah, all right. So we'll, you guys had the chance to read the minutes from July meeting, yeah?
Yeah.
Any comments, questions, or edits?
No. I make a motion we approve the July minutes as stated, as written.
I,
All in favor, aye?
Aye,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, I can't,
Jumped
just
the gun.
two of you, yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you. No new business today, so we're moving on to old business. And first, believe it or not, is the chicken ordinance request, and the citizen comments.
So you want me to start my thoughts?
Sure.
I kind of agree with what David said, and I was thinking about this before he said it, but like, I hear all the arguments against chickens, and, they make sense, but then if you apply them to other pets, then, Poolsville shouldn't have dogs, shouldn't have cats, shouldn't have other things, so, I think that I'm leaning towards wanting to try something like this. Now, I guess my big question is, enforcement, like, we still have, is Skip Etheridge part-time?
Yes, code enforcement is complaint-based and part-time.
Okay. Did you see any reason why, any red flags, like if a neighbor is upset because the chickens smell or somebody got a rooster and didn't give it away or whatever, that we couldn't handle that with town enforcement?
No more than how we handle it now.
Okay.
So, but having, I just want to make sure that the language that we come up with is not subjective.
Yes.
And it's very detailed and, put in place, similar to what Matthew had talked about. There were certain parts in there.
No, I think we need to, what Matthew said and like drill down and like, maybe even like tighten it more, but have very strict, at least at least at the beginning, very strict protocols, rules, whatever you want to call them, so there's no ambiguity or whatever. That's very clear to people. And I guess it's it's something that if we do it for a year and it's something that's just not working for Poolsville, we can always change it. I mean, it's too bad. I know this is not possible. I'm just thinking out loud. It's too bad we can't do a referendum. Like it's like costs so much money to like have people vote and everything. But it'd be interesting to see, what the town really wanted. But I get the sense from talking to people, people feel very strongly about it. Like Jerry's, I hear a lot of those comments, but I also hear a lot of people like, I don't know why we can't do it. And I think I probably hear 75% of like, you should vote yes, 25% like, no way. But that's not a fair sample probably. But the things that people complain about are concerned about, to me, they just seem like, I don't know. They don't seem like they're insurmountable problems. I mean, they seem like they're things that aren't that we can work around with good regulations. Those are my thoughts.
No, and as we talked before, the chickens aren't the problem. It's some people are the
Right.
problem, and that's
Sure.
with everything we deal with.
Yep, understood.
So, when this has been brought up in the past, I still have the same, a concern is how much would it cost to actually have viable enforcement of stringent code, right? I mean, if it's complaint-based, is that really viable enforcement? Or, I mean, viable enforcement to me means that we can maintain it without it ever becoming a problem. If there's a complaint, then there's already a problem. So that's a general question. And there seems to be more interest than the last time I remember this coming before us. But it still puts us in this situation of how much would it cost and how much burden would it be on the town if this is a very successful endeavor and a lot of people want to have chickens. And then if it's not that successful and not that many people want it, then should we really be passing new code in for a small part of the town? Again, I don't mean these to be reasons why we can't make this happen, just things that I think we need to think about and understand before we put the onus on the existing town staff to enforce this.
I'm curious, Wade, do you think, to what Brian said, do you think that that if this happens, I mean, you know, I can't imagine that many families are gonna, you know, take advantage of it. You'd have some, but do you see this as a excessive burden? I mean,
That is a what-if question to a what-if-it-if, so I can't answer that, really.
you can't answer if you think it would be a burden, like if.
I don't know how many people would do it,
Yeah.
how many people would be in compliance. That's
Yeah.
off the cuff, that's a difficult question to answer.
Yep, okay.
Can I just ask a question? All of our code enforcement is complaint-based, correct? Like for
Correct.
everything?
Everything.
So there's nothing that's just a viable, it's already happening, even on accessory structures or anything. It's all complaint-based. Okay. So it wouldn't necessarily be different, it would just be new complaints potentially.
The
A
only-
new category of complaints.
We already have chicken complaints.
Fair, right? already have, so it's not even new. No, and that came from me. I'm sorry, I didn't really articulate that very well. Comes from the opposition, right? There's more opposition to this than there is about putting up sheds. So it seems like to be able to do this, we want to be able to make that to make it work for everybody involved. A compromise, right? We want to find the right path, and I just want to make sure we're considering those things. I was going to ask Wade if he could put together for our next meeting potentially an idea of what it might cost to fund a mildly successful enforcement program.
What does that mean?
Well, given as a basis, and I say mildly, we'll, I don't know, whatever we can agree on a number of applicants, 100 or 50 or 600, whatever,
Are you
but,
talking-
But something that we can get an idea of what a number, regardless of whether we think it's successful or not. We say 100 people want permits, or then what does that mean for the burden on the town? How would the staff be able to handle that? And I'm not asking you to do that today, but what are the cost implications? Where do we see? And maybe there's nothing to really even think about. Maybe it's not that expensive and we don't have to worry about it, but I think it's probably worth looking
I think that's probably a hard thing, because like Wade said, we don't know, out of those 100, what if only one of them has an issue? What if 50 of them have, like, that's a
yeah.
very wide range where it could be
was-
like everyone to let, I know what you're thinking, but
Yeah.
like I just feel like that's a really hard what if.
Hey,
Yeah,
Kevin,
so,
when you,
sorry, active enforcement. 100 people in town have chickens. We have these codes. They have to be inspected by our inspector.
Oh, so you're gonna put inspections in this also?
Well, I mean,
So it depends what you want to put in it, but typically, like, someone comes in for a shed permit, they have a plat, they have the, picture of what it's gonna look like, we talked about, maybe it's the size of a structure, whatever, where it's gonna be placed on the property, and then they install it, and as long as it's all good to go, we don't come back and check it again to see if they expanded on it,
Right.
or if they moved it, or this doesn't happen unless the complaint comes in.
Will there be a fee for a chicken permit? Is that something that we would think of? Because that might
Yes.
offset the cost if there is an enforcement thing.
because we're gonna have to
I
offset
mean-
town hall's time, like they're gonna have to issue permits, I assume, and that'll take a
It
little
would be
bit.
just like a shed structure permit, and Jay,
Yeah.
jump in if you need to.
Can I make some comments?
I mean, the problem is with, you can have one problem because it's not enforcement, it's the issue. It's when that one person doesn't comply, and to make them comply could mean taking them all the way to court. So one problem could be extra expensive. But you can't look at this policy based on the negatives, There's 99 problems that aren't. So I think that there's a way we can tailor this. To have an inspection program, that's going to take an issue. That's going to take time, staff time to do. So that's an automatic cost whether there's problems or not. So we can draft up some options like we did with the other stuff and say, this is the way we do it one way, we could do it this way, and give you some flavors, I guess.
Oh, so when this came up, so I thought to myself that we're not the first town to deal with this, right? So I think we're trying to create the wheel when we don't need to. So looked at articles, news articles from when Rockville adopted a chicken ordinance, when Gaithersburg adopted a chicken ordinance, when Frederick, and there's news articles during the debate process and a lot of hand-wringing. No articles since those. So these all occurred in 2015, 2014, when they adopted these ordinances. There's no news articles now about backyard chickens or any. I've talked to some people who have called the county to ask if they receive many complaints about code enforcement, and anecdotally, the answer is like minimal to none. Looking at the other towns' codes in the county, Somerset, Down County, high value homes, Chevy Chase, high value homes, they simply just write, they just say that keeping of animals must be pertained within the code of Montgomery County. So Montgomery County has a code for keeping animals, and you have to be safe, you have to be sanitary, you have to do this. I feel if we go down the rabbit hole of trying to create code and all that, we're going to put us into binds that we don't need to create. Let animal control handle all that. Let animal control take care of the permitting. We don't need to be in the business of permitting chickens. We can just say, if you want animals, fine. There's a county ordinance already in place for that, and you got to abide by those rules. So if you want a chicken in Montgomery County, if you live in Dawsonsville, if you live in Germantown, unincorporated areas, you just have to file a permit with the county, and the enforcement is done by the county. I don't think we have the resources to implement a receiving of applications, receiving of this. I mean, we don't receive applications for dogs or cats.
That county does all the licensing.
Yeah, and if there's a complaint, people call animal control and not town, so,
Does the county have like setbacks and stuff like that?
yeah, they do. So it's 25 feet from a property line and 100 feet from the nearest neighbor's dwelling.
And what about a townhome?
Won't be permitted because of the 25 feet, because townhomes are only 20 feet wide.
Can I offer a suggestion? That you guys decide whether you want to go one way or another and direct staff to draft something and put it in front of you. That's the easiest way to go.
I think so.
Jay and I can work on it together.
This is a good discussion. I wish Lexi were here. Like, I know she's done a lot
I
of
think we
research
know
on
her.
this, huh?
I think we know her.
Yeah, but we don't know. We don't know which way she wants to go. Are you saying pick a direction, like as in like, do we want the county or do we want Poolsville?
Yeah.
Where we are.
So I'd be curious to hear Lexi's thoughts on that. But you raised good points, Kevin. I mean, like, why reinvent the wheel if it's already done? I mean, I'd
Because you
want
won't
to.
get the enforcement from the county. I agree with what Jerry had said earlier,
Right.
just knowing how that operates.
But we won't get it from town, will we?
We might, yeah.
10 times more than the county,
Oh, okay.
and that's not enough.
Yeah. So we take a vote?
What if we used the same code, but then instead have it under town, enforcement still in some ways, but permit comes through the county, and if we need to, they call. I guess it can't come through the county then, because we wouldn't have it on record, correct? Is that?
Right, and right now, we supersede the county. The county, we already adopted Chapter 5 of the county's law. So that's already, animal control is, you can do it in town. We supersede that law with what we have, but we have to enforce it, the county won't enforce it. But Jay, anything else to add there?
I mean, I think the direction should be simple at this point. Do you want us to spend staff time to try to figure some options out? And if you do, we will, and then you guys can sort through it. And if you say that you don't want us to do it, then we can put it off, or you can postpone the decision on that. But, we can do it kind of more cohesive when we sit down and kind of brainstorm internally.
So should we do a vote?
Well, before we do that, I just want to get Jay and Wade's perspectives. So if we go just like county regulations and everything, you're saying that enforcement will be less likely to occur because it would be done through animal control. Are there any other negatives to going that route that you can think of just off the top of your head?
I've not looked in depth at what their ordinance actually, has into it, so.
Right.
So maybe if we do vote, hey, let's ask the town staff to explore this issue, they can research that and come back and say, hey, we think it's a good idea to just use the counties, or we recommend writing our own more in-depth.
Right, because if it's the three things that we saw on the preface of the ordinance for the
Yeah.
county, that's probably not going to be enough.
Yeah, yeah.
So Brian, do you want to do a vote to see how we proceed here? You want me to make a motion?
It's up to you.
So what would the motion be? I make a motion that we proceed with,
Direct staff. to move
directing
forward.
staff to like explore more about this. Is that enough?
Or how about make a motion to
Yeah.
direct staff to write code for the allowance of backyard chickens in the town of Poolsville?
Do we want to go that far?
Because I think we're beyond the point of,
Wait, I think we got the idea. I mean, it's really, do you want to spend the time and money to do this? And you're saying yes, so we will come up with all the pros and cons and different ways for you, like we do with everything else.
Okay, so Kevin's motion then.
Seconded.
Sorry. Say it again.
Seconded.
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Motion carries.
Was that four,
gobble,
or
gobble.
3 to
Oh,
1?
that's turkeys. What did this chicken say?
Chickens say, put me in the backyard and keep me out of the food trucks. Next order of old business is the food truck ordinance.
It is ironic that we're talking about chickens and food trucks.
Yeah.
Okay, so in your packets was the first food truck that we came up with, a set of standard regulations and permitting process for food trucks that aren't going to be on site all the time. They're limited to hours of operation, 4 days a week, then they got to move. And so I think everybody was happy with that. I just put it in the packet again to make sure that everybody was on board with it, because, you weren't here and,
Yep.
okay, so make sure it was good with that. So this is going to go into a format to go forward to the commissioners. Jay, do they need to vote on this to push this forward?
No.
Or are we good? Okay.
You won't see this again then. It'll just go straight to the commissioners in the final format.
Okay. Then secondly was a memo from Jay on, to address Tony's Barbecue came in, and they want to be able to have a food truck and not move it and keep it on site. So they don't fall into the categories when I comply with the permitting process. So for that, that would be a special exception. And Jay has outlined, this is already existing in our code right now for, it's identified in drive-in windows, something we looked at before. We didn't want to do it because it was too onerous just for a guy who's going to be in town for a couple of days to spend $650 and go through a 2-month process, to get a special exception. So this would cover Tony's Barbecue, the other food type vendors that would be sitting in place longer.
So meaning, it would cover him, meaning, if I understood Jay's memo correctly, that he would have to come in and apply for the exception, and
He's got to go
it
through
would
the
only, it would
BZA.
only cover him if the BZA and the planning commission agreed that it was a worthwhile exception.
That's correct.
Right.
That's correct.
Seems like a good way to go to me. I do think it ends up not being fair if you're Tony's might be the only place that ever does this, but to park it and sit in, that kind of a model, it seems unfair to like ask them to move every few days and all that stuff. So it does seem like a good way to go.
And it's more fair to the bricks and mortars that are in place that, yeah. So if everybody's okay with it, we'll just carry the ball and move forward with it. Okay.
Got no objection.
You don't need a motion?
No?
Moving on, our last bit of old business, comprehensive plan, closed schedule.
Sorry, I'm gonna restate that because my mic was off. Moving on to the final order of old business is the comprehensive plan proposed schedule. Is that it here?
Right, so I met with Ray from Wallace and Montgomery. Lauren, who was the project lead on this, right now she's on extensive leave or something, whatever, she's not part of the process anymore. So he's got other team members that are stepping in right now. And so they've laid out a whole new itemized list of where we're going to go from here, a timeline schedule. They have our adoption of April of '23, so we're going to be fine with that. They're going through the process now of drafting it and doing the interviews. And that's just where we are with it right now. So they'll be here next month, hopefully get some draft items out. We might even have a work session or something offline, because we want to have the drafts just to ourselves to be able to work through. And so we may have a couple work sessions depending on our workload moving forward.
Great.
Awesome.
Any sense if Lauren's gonna be back or not?
It didn't seem like it.
Huh, that's too bad. I liked her.
Yeah, she's good to work with.
She was.
So that's all I have on that, and that's where we are.
To be fair, the whole team, you guys mentioned it in the last meeting, the whole Wallace Montgomery team during that event was really,
They were
Yeah.
fantastic, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
think
not
the,
like there's-
the rest of the team is picking up
yeah,
where
I
she
feel like
left
we
off,
told
but
her
she's, yeah.
They all seem very good.
well, I just,
I was expecting to be here later.
sorry.
It's okay, do you want a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Wow. Have a good night.